Bună ziua și bine v-am regăsit, atât pe cei care sunteți aici cu noi la FABER, cât și pe cei care ne urmăriți online. Bine ați venit la a doua încercare în a discuta despre industria timișoreană. Am început acest program de design care pornește de la economia Timișoarei și de la industria timișoreană în mod particular, anul trecut, în anul Capitalei Culturale, sub numele de Bright Cityscapes, în parteneriat cu Universitatea Politehnică Timișoara. Anul trecut, focusul nostru a fost pe industria automotive, cea mai puternică industrie din Timișoara în acest moment, iar anul acesta ne concentrăm pe industria textilă, o industrie care este în decădere, dar care în mod surprinzător este o industrie în continuare puternică și importantă pentru România. Programul nostru a început și în acest an, ca în anul precedent, cu o cercetare despre industria timișoreană, în acest caz industria textilă, cercetare coordonată de Norbert Petrovici, aici cu noi, iar întreg programul de design este curatoriat și coordonat de Martina Muzi, designer și curator de origine italiană. Martina trăiește în Olanda și predă la Design Academy Eindhoven și suntem foarte norocoși și bucuroși ca colaborarea cu ea, început acum 2 ani, să continue și astăzi și să continue și în următoarele 2 ediții ale programului, când vom discuta despre industria chimică și cea agroalimentară. Cu această ocazie voi schimba limba în cea engleză ca să ne înțeleagă și invitații noștri străini. So, welcome and thank you very much for being here with us today. I just wanted to introduce a bit the program in Romanian for everybody. I will invite Martina to tell you a bit about the design of the program and about our approach. After Martina, we will have a presentation from Norbert Petrovici, our head researcher, who will tell you a bit about the findings, the key findings in the research this year. Then we will have a short series of debates, which will be conversations between different actors with whom we have been interacting also this year in our attempt to build bridges between different perspectives. We will start with a debate about education. Then we will have a break and we will continue with 3 other short debates between designers, representatives of the industry and researchers. So I hope this sparks a bit your curiosity and I'm looking forward to hear the insights which the designers and everybody here will present. Martina?
Thank you, Ana. Thank you for the introduction. Also from the experience of last year, this is a really insightful moment because finally we have the time to speak also with you. The process that precedes the exhibition that is here, that some slides are behind, just to bring you also from who didn't visit it yet into the space. It is a process which has as a central component the idea of conversation. In fact, with the designers that participated to the exhibition, we have been indeed talking and feedbacks, exchanging knowledge, passion, visions for about 3 months. And now is finally the moment in that this conversation can also open up a bit. And starting from me, which I was invited by FABER to think together of a design program for long term, which is an important time for design to not only perform, but potentially also root itself within a context. I'm starting maybe giving you a bit of a orientation in the design signal program, which is a vast and rich in terms of knowledge and conversation and exchanges, which we decided at the end to present in the form of an exhibition using space and as a form of publishing research, activations, engagements, and to give space to all the different ages that we have been collaborating with. Design Signals, it is a name that we choose, also learning from the great experience of last year program Bright Cityscapes, to emphasize the idea that design doesn't exist in isolation, but indeed it is a discipline that it's rooted within different parties, different agents, different materials, techniques, media. And therefore this idea of signaling, which is a term that we find in biology, in gender studies, it is it became an important word for us. Signaling design potential between practitioners in relation with the city, and also with, really important for us, spaces of production that are not necessarily easily accessible, like for example manufacturing centers or small or large scale companies. Let's say all the different agents that make the context productive and also interconnected with other places and people. And that's why the first and most important step that we did, it was establishing a conversation with Norbert Petrovici, a conversation that challenges us both in the sense of was merging together expertise that comes from data analysis, anthropological studies within economical context, and design narratives, design media, and design readings. And exactly this first conversation was informing the entire process, the entire program, with a set of knowledge and information, and also a set of somehow I would say key to unlock some design questions that are central for both the process of developing design work, but also the processes of questioning the right media that in which the context can, the right media that can perform and communicate with different publics. In this edition, the exhibition is named Woven Secrets, and it takes as a starting point the textile industry as an industry of our interest. Why? There are possible and many answers to this, but the one that was more close to us is because last year we started with a portrait of an economy of Timișoara that brought us immediately to look at manufacturing as a sector of the industry, more precisely about automotive, the most flourishing, the most productive, and also the most interesting industry for foreign capital and supply chains. Therefore, this year we wanted to move towards an industry which is historically rooted with Timișoara, with the area, and with Romania in general. And the textile industry, which presents totally different characteristics from the automotive industry, was the one that we thought was the theme of the year. Also for the location of FABER, which is neighboring to Unu Iuni, a really important factory that is now in the moment of is being demolished and being transformed in a probably a fast-paced together as following transformation that happens all around the city. We thought that the textile industry was there, is here, it's already here. And therefore we decided to start looking at to start again this conversation with Norbert, which expanded the research with a set of data and also analysis with a new report which is named Shifts in Global Textile Markets, Romania's Role in the Global Value Chain from 1962 to 2022. Already the title 1962-2022, it's a title that it's a timeline of observation that indeed was super important for the thematic of the textile industry. But mostly put us in the position as designers or cultural agents, if I might say that. Which kind of question do we pose to the textile industry? And probably the most relevant one, it became to be where is textile, how textile industry has been changing, how textile industry it became more subtle to be understood, where is it hiding? In the moment that we maybe experience locally a drastic change on the transformation of factories, which are the most, even on an urban design level, the most visible agents of production into textile, but indeed textile is still continuing, is still enduring, and is transforming indeed. So the question is, what is transforming? And that was a question that we share through an open call in which we invited 4 designers that participated with us. The designers are Alesia Cîdă, Nicoletta Lavinia Ghimbășan, Andreea Anna Maria Pleșa, Anna Maria Mihaela Vișovan, Maria Gabriela Rada, Maria Dombrov. And I mean, I said 4 designers because 2 are a duo. And we will meet them later. Designer on which we asked to share this question. They come from they are in different moments of their career. They come from different relation with the textile industry. And that's actually personally, it was the most beautiful aspect of this group of designers this year, because I had the pleasure to work with, in a way, real experts. I always say that to understand design, you need to also understand the economy of the place, in the sense that the design also follows some trends and some cycles. In this case, having Gabriela working in UTT industry, company, and having an expertise on threads, for example, or Lavinia developing her own Nalba studio in relation to wool. So the expertise this year of the designers was much connected to the network that then we also represented to Norbert in terms of research, how to position these factories, for example. And that was beautiful. So the work that we developed in the last 3 months, which was also based on conversation, because for who doesn't know, we meet weekly online to develop a project proposal, but also for the designer to slowly enter in our method of work, which is not isolated, but is composed of several. There is a production team which is able to support and link the designers to the network of factories, for example, that are locally here active, or to support in expanding their network for example, companies that are close by. Within this process, the projects that are presented today within the exhibition, they are projects that started with the expertise of a specific industry or a specific role within an industry of the designers, and also starting from their dream. And then it developed more into a design landscape. The beautiful part of this exhibition for me, it is we developed research, we understood textile industry to different experts with the information design studio Interurban, where Razvan was our main contact, Razvan Zanfira, with Norbert, visiting factories and visiting companies, also with the communication team composed of Diana and Alex, we engaged with the productive ecosystem, but at the end, what is in the show, it's almost like posing question back to the context from a design point of view, which is how can we connect, how can we re-engage, how can we create space, and literally space for design practice to emerge, to take some freedom from the more standardized request of the industry, for example, or how can we link through design and through their practice to some holes or some gaps that the industry has. In relation, next to this layer of experimentation and testing method, working with wool, synthetic fibers, different threads, reimagining the landscape of waste in the work of Alesia, for example. Next to this more experimental and design-oriented approach, there is also a level which is really dear that together with FABER team was developed, which is a more of a social design approach. So how a cultural space can also become a catalyzer for giving space to memory, giving space to activities, bringing people that not necessarily go to museums or are engaged with cultural programs. And this is what we call this year neighborhood conversation. So again, this word conversation comes back, which is a word that was taken entirely under in account for example, the design of a community festival in August, which initiated the beginning of an engagement with the local community of the neighborhood. And the most tangible aspect of this engagement are a series of artifacts and a series of voice recorded interviews that the communication team of FABER collected in the past months, asking and looking for, like observing together with, collecting in different locations in the neighborhood through the interviews and encounters with people. Questions like, have you been working in the textile industry? Have you been working in Uno Uni? What was your everyday life? What was memory about? What the industry, what this specific factory represented? And then we could really understand it was a big revelation for everybody. We've been speaking with Oana about how to bring this energy, this memory with care. How can we give a space, how the exhibition space and the programs related to that, like the mediation program, which is a program that activates different publics in different moments to keep the exhibition alive. How can we include, and even more for the textile industry topic, how can we include it within our process? And so what you will see in the exhibition are a set of bobbins that have been collected as a leftover material from Uno Uni. There are personal items from previous workers that have been donated to us. There are also a set of documents, for example, the letters of employment that testify the personal relationship that the company was also creating with the individual worker. There are a set of manual that speaks about the technological level of the time and the typology of machineries, also considering machineries in big scale machineries to be really important for large scale production, but then with an historical change or a political change or trend change, questioning the flexibility of those industries. And this information have been collected and will be presented online within the FABER website, because slowly also something we started in the previous year with mirroring the ecosystem, we want to give space to this collective memory forming through media that are dear to design, from oral presentation, like oral contribution, to more material contributions. There is also a reportage, a photographic reportage that continue opening the door to the factories that this year were also really open to collaborate with us and collaborate with the designer, which is always a big challenge. It's a process of try and error, as we like to say. Which we'll also have the pleasure to encounter. We speak about cotton text, Pasmatex, UTT, AMP, and EcoCinix, which are all different factories that in different ways participate to the existence and Lanaterm, sorry, excuse me, that participate at this portrait of the economy of today in different way, working with wool for isolation in construction, weaving laboratories, threading laboratories. So let's say at different moments of the supply chain of behind our textile products, which through the work of Razvan and together with Norbert, we are trying to also give it back to the public. What are those textile products? They are products that are textile, as we can recognize. We can talk about wearables, or threads and resources, but there are also products that are invisible in other sectors of the industry, connected to chemistry, connected to automotive, connected to agriculture. And to conclude, the last two contributions of the exhibition are from two designers which are more advanced in their careers, and we are talking about Dinu Bodiciu and Amalia, which brings in the show two perspectives totally different in my perception. The approach of Dinu Bodiciu, which is also an educator, and approach the textile industry deconstructing and reconstructing, merging global artifacts with extremely traditional ones within the construction of collections, but also activating different forms of thinking and approaching textile within his academic career. And Amalia, a really positive, good example of sensitivity with both the material resources, technology innovation, and who establish an atelier, or a factory we can call it, in order to produce products that can respect the value in which sustainability, responsiveness to the market, and a thorough precision in the making can be done. And there is an aspect that we will speak later also, which is our educational program, which we call Young Matters, under the conception that what young people think to learn matters to us and matters to them. And this is a space that for us, we always protect the space of experimenting with pedagogy. We did it last year already, and we are continuing. And I hope this introduction, I will ask if to the public here, if there is something I think it's enough for now. And I leave the stage to Norbert Petrovici, that will bring us within the research. Thank you.
Thank you. How does it work? I will have to stay a little bit. Okay, works. Good. I cannot sit when I speak. I will try to show the charts. In upper part, you can see the GDP of Romania from 1962 up until 2021. where you, everything is put in real values, that is deflated values, comparable values based on 2015 values of the USD and the global economy. Our economy has two great moments of growth, or spur of growth, in the 70s, and the second one is post 2011. 2008 is a peak, but nonetheless, nowadays, after the COVID crisis, once again the economy reached back the same level of 2008 and above. During this period, long period, the period where you can see certainly an explosion in exports and imports is after 2002, 2004. Up until then, the exports compared with the GDP were kind of smaller, and this indicates a very particular type of economy, somehow a little bit stereotypical in how we perceived it, that is a more open economy right now in the last 10 years, and a closed economy during socialism. However, if we dig a little bit further, the image changes a little bit. Here, it's the same chart, however, put it in percentages. How much was the export and imports out of the total GDP? And obviously, we can see that we have a plateau after 2011, a maximum in the 2000, and a growth from socialism. However, this image changes a little bit if we compared not to the Romanian GDP, but to the global trade balances and trade values. Up, you can see the percentage of or the share of exports and imports, the global trade, out of the global GDP. That means that the economy of the world became much more intertwined, especially after 2000. And there was another spur in the 70s that reached maximum at the beginning of the 80s. If we use this index, that is how much trade was in the world during that particular period, we can see that actually, compared with the global trade, Romania had two major periods of exports and also imports. First, in the 70s, up until the 80s, and after 2004, coming up to now. Moreover, in terms of USD, real values, standardized, the two periods, based on the global value of how much Romania exported from the total trade, actually the periods are comparable. And I think this is an important point because it makes sense for a lot of people who experience socialism or the socialist factory, especially in the textile, and I will come back to that, is that in the interviews, people are talking always about exports and how the economy was strongly linked with that. Here is also from the 62 up until 2021, the values by sector of Romanian exports in deflated USD, so real values based on 2015 values. And while in the 60s, the major exports of Romania was agriculture. In the 70s, it was minerals, but actually that's petroleum and barrels. We exported petrol in order to finance the imports of machinery. And steadily, from the 90s, the textile became the most important sector for Romanian exports. Nonetheless, this was a slump in Romania's exports. And during the boom of after 2002 of Romania, the textile became the most important sector in terms of values that outpaced anything else up until then. So the 2000s, for Romania, it's the era of the textile exports. However, during the 2006, Romania entered European Union, and a major change happened, and a lot of other sectors became very important for the national economy. The most important, the services, became very a key sector of export. But probably an interesting point here is that also the services were quite an important sector also during socialism, once again giving credence to the interviews and accounts about how people traveled in various types of sectors, offering services for installing different types of factories or other architectural elements. There is a huge or bigger literature right now. And after the services, Romania became the second and third and fourth sector, most important one, were electronics, vehicles, and machinery in terms of value. Also metals become important, and the chemical sector also has a boom. Here we have the same chart, but now we represent the values as percentages, as share of the global total sector. That is, if we look at how much textile was exported globally and how much Romanian exported, the textile sector became the principal or the most important sector of Romanian economy from the 70s, and still it's quite an important one also during the up until 2021. And here we have the annual shares in each year, how much money or dollars, USD, was produced, was created by various sectors. The textile became the most important after the 90s, up until the financial crisis. But another point here that I would like to insist is this one. And right now, we are producing as much more textiles and value in textile than we ever produced. And also, it's at the maximum, or very similar at the maximum as Romania exported. So textile, it's still at the level of the maximum of 2000s, but other sectors became much more valuable. And here we look at the relative comparative advantage. How good was Romania in terms of exports? Comparing with other countries, the products, if they were unique enough to represent an advantage on the global markets. By sector, the textile sector was quite important from the 70s up until 2008. Then the relative comparative advantage went down brutally. And now became not marginal, but medium compared with other sectors. In terms of complexity, however, the textiles became much more complex in the last 10 years. We can see there is an increase in the complexity of Romanian exports. So it's kind of a paradox. On the one hand, the textile sector reached a certain peak, and we still produce at the same peak as the end of the 2000s. The complexity of the products became much more, became much more complex, but the relative advantage decreased. That is, the textile sector is right now overpaced by other countries. This helped us to search for another clue, which is kind of important. Right now, the textile sector is only the second most valuable sector in Romania, as opposed to the other sectors. That is, it's the bottom left, bottom down of the Romanian economy. That's why we looked at the values of the products that Romania exports, exactly which are all the products, and based on the methodology of Hidalgo and Hauserman, we identified which kind of products are connected together. The methodology says like this: there is a tacit knowledge. When you are exporting a particular type of product, you will probably export other type of product based on the same tacit knowledge. And they identified this by looking to all countries across the from 1962 up until now, and correlate spatially two products if they are exported in the same time, and if they are connected through tacit knowledge. Based on a lot of products, this creates a very complex map of what is exported simultaneously with other types of products and what is not exported simultaneously with other products. In Romania, we took all the products that Romania exported based on competitive advantage and their complexity, and watch which are other products that are exported globally. And that's why we created a classification in three dimensions. First, the proper textile, then the connected textiles, and then we have the related products. What is that? Once we look at the product, how they are manufactured in a particular type of factory, the factory have a certain type of major activity. However, in that major activity, it can be, without problem, electronics. But still, when they are exporting, the products are classified as textile products. All the connected sectors are sectors that are exporting predominantly on the global market textile products. Related are all that products that are needed in the supply chains of textiles, or they are part of the supply chains furthermore as textile products. That's why we have a related space in which we could identify all the type of economic activities related to textiles. And what is interesting, and this also chart shows, that the textile sector became much more smaller. However, the textile products were incorporated in other products like chemical, leather, paper, electronics, and in related products in the supply chains, that is electronics, metal, minerals, agriculture, chemical, machinery, stone, and paper. We have paper and paper because there are different types of activities, economic activities. And this allowed us to see that actually the textile is right now just a small portion as an economic activity of the whole spectrum of products that are involved in the supply chains and are created by textile sectors. And we were also able to chart all the companies by place based on their economic activities. And this is a map of the employees in textile sector and connected sectors. The major point here is that the textile sector as such has a small number of employees totally in Romania and also by county. For example, Timiș has 1,140 employees. And here is the map of turnover produced by the textile sector and the connected sectors. However, if we are going to the related sectors that are part of the supply chains of the textile, or the textile is part of their supply chains, the picture obviously changes a lot. And we have the classical places in Romania, Timiș included, that benefited from a history of textile sector because it became part of the tacit knowledge of the region that was incorporated subsequently in the economic activities of the related sectors. And this is also happens with the turnover. Timișoara is also a key county or region where this kind of sectors produced. How we came up with this idea from last time when we investigated Timișoara's economy, regional economy, we saw that during socialism, various factories that were in the interwar period, factories that were producing textile products or footwear and apparel products were incorporated in socialism through various types of investments that came afterwards in sectors that became or morphed in chemical sectors. So the textile sector was, interwar period was a key sector of the subsequent chemical sectors of socialism. And then the same knowledge, even if the proper textile is kind of small right now, became a part of a larger landscape where the sector plays a key role in related development of the regions. And this is kind of the big idea.
Thank you, Norbert. I'm really happy that we could share some insights and some processes, because we have the privilege to speak with Norbert along all the months. Thank you. And I would like now to go to the next conversation. Finally, we can occupy the chairs. I would invite Cristian Blidariu to join. Cristian Blidariu is a Vice President of OAR, in charge of the Continuous Learning and Education Department, as well as Dean of Faculty of Architecture and Urban Planning in Timișoara, where he teaches the course of Architecture Theory and coordinates the first year Architecture Studio. Thank you for joining, and it's also beautiful to meet again from last year adventure. And I will also invite the tutors that participated this year in our Young Mothers program. Would invite Bianca, Connor, and Domitille. Bianca Schick is a designer, design researcher, and image creator based in Rotterdam. Her extensive practice includes multimedia project, visual communication, and commission design project. She's concerned with politics of representation and interested in how system works and how media influence these systems. Bianca also participated within the process of the project of last year. She assisted the curation and also developed indeed AI visuals. So it's always nice to bring back people working here at FABER. Domitille Debret is a designer, technologist, and educator focused on interactive and informational design. She works with databases, digitized collection, and archives, seeking the most relevant formats to display each one's unique content. Active also in teaching, participating in juries, design courses, and workshops. Thank you. And then we have Connor Cook, a media artist and researcher from California, currently based in Amsterdam. Connor primarily works with game engines and other real-time software systems, transforming the technical operations of machine into visual and collective experiences. Thank you. I wanted to give you a small bio reading because I think what was really beautiful about this Young Matter program this year, and we had the chance to bring approaches to design that can also compensate the approaches of design of the designers that were participating in the exhibition. And so where design meets technology, not only for an idea of applying technology, but also practices that question those technological tools. And that was a bit of at the core of our program this year. And I would immediately create a bridge between the public and what happened. So I don't know who wants to introduce how did you guys started this workshop? It was a workshop of a week. This I didn't say before, sorry. It was a workshop of a week. We opened a call by connecting with different student associations that help us to spread the word of the open call from both Politehnica University of Timișoara, but also West University of Timișoara. And meanwhile, the applications were coming in. We worked with the tutors on imagining a framework in which students from many different disciplines, varying from medicine to urban planning to
construction, computer science.
How could we create a framework that could invite these different disciplines in collaborating with design? And then I would really like a bit of backstage information. What happened in the workshop?
I think maybe on a high level, what we were trying to do with the workshop was make a sort of detour that really started from the initial starting points of the students. Each of the students came with a project that they wanted to work on, which, roughly speaking, was a different ways and visions that they had for the future of the city. And we wanted to honor that initial starting point, but then kind of take them on a detour through our different methodologies that maybe arrives back at the initial starting point in a sort of reconfigured way without losing track of what we found really inspiring, which was the sort of ambition and optimism of the students and this quite pragmatic desire to really make a change. So we kind of passed through each of our methodologies, which, as Martina introduced, are quite different in nature. But I think on a high level, first started with a practice of sort of gathering content from the city. So using tools like 3D scanning or just taking pictures, or even going on Google Street View and sort of navigating spaces and trying to find artifacts to build up a sort of library or archive of different sort of representations of their initial interest in the city. I don't know if either of you want to expand on that.
Yeah, one point that was like very important is to ground their ideas and work more on traces they could find in the city to sort of display their ideas. And it was something that was quite interesting and challenging for them as well, to sort of like scale down or scale up their approach to refine their idea and to make their sort of proposition stronger on a different level. So that's why we worked with sort of investigation methodology to like go, take pictures in the city, find ways on maps or on Google Street View, traces that illustrated their different projects.
And you're talking about the ideas. Maybe if you can share what were a bit the initial idea, just for us to grasp. Of the student? Yes. Yeah. And how then you were able to make these ideas and count your method in a way.
Yes. So the ideas were very different. They were very like reality based. So there were people who wanted to, like students, who wanted to make a sort of campaign about and awareness about using sunscreen, because for example a lot of people don't do that, and there is a big issue with skin cancer in Romania. Then there were other people who were really like angry about the fact that the Bega River is so, nothing happens there. There is no leisure activity around, and that the boats are nearly always empty. I mean, there were a lot. Then there was this idea of wanting to introduce more the idea of composting in the neighborhood. Then we had like a shared library, like a sort of vending machine where you could take a book and exchange it, and you could put them in different places in the city. So quite practical things, but then of course the making of it's much more complex, and we tried also to complexify their proposals.
Something that also came up throughout the practice was this format of writing a letter to the city. One of the students, the student working on the Bega River project, felt so passionate and angry in the way that he was framing the problem that one of us asked if he had written a complaint letter to the city. And that sort of stimulated us to think of a new format, which was thinking of these letters. So write any type of letter, whether it's a love letter, a complaint letter, whatnot, as a practice of trying to better frame the problem and build some more nuance into what the problem each of them was working with. Because as Domitille mentioned, one of the issues that we came across was this notion of scale, that a lot of the students had very ambitious projects that maybe in their ambition actually sort of it becomes harder to make a sort of concrete impact when you're talking on a too high of a level about projects. So we tried to get them to like really focus maybe on one particular detail or one location in the city or whatnot through the format of the letter, which then we sort of, rather than just having a written letter, we supplemented these texts only with images that they could find through Google Street View in Timișoara. So trying to build also visual narratives and looking at different representational forms as a way of first framing the problem before we sort of re-engaged with this like more solution or sort of utopian-oriented thinking, which was the second half of the workshop.
Before going to the second half of the workshop, there is something that we learned from the previous experience of last year together with Cristian and the architecture students that participated in the program. It was an exchange program called Atlas of Distances in collaboration with Delft University with the master
Borders and Territories.
Borders and Territories, and with Technogeography Studio of Design Academy Eindhoven. We realized also preparing the workshops before coming here that there is an important aspect, which is how to link pedagogy with the context in which we are. So I was curious to know how this is this engagement that happens also within your courses. If you can give your perspective from the perspective of your studies, but also being as a dean, how this is integrated in the curriculum.
Yes, well, thank you, Martina. First of all, let me congratulate you for the second year of this project. I think it's amazing that what we started last year is continuing, and you have great plans for the years, for the following years. So I would say that in our case, the experience that we had last year in Bright Cityscapes with our educational program was extremely impactful on the level on our students and in their desire to have similar experiences. So it was, as you know very well, a new thing for us to work in this format where we mix students from different years, and we worked on a brief that was being built up on the go. So we didn't start with the proper brief, but allowed them to build their own briefs inside our call. I would say it was more of a call than a brief. And it definitely created this opportunity for a format where they learned to work with students that were not necessarily in their cohort, so in their year, and to share their knowledge. And this, what is interesting, we saw that this format continued, and some stayed in these teams and went to do architecture competitions and to even to challenge the school system and some of the studios that we are having right now. Although I have to say it was a very complicated format to implement, as you are well aware of this. I think it is super important to have this type of experiences, and not only what we had in our school program, but I have to say that even by the end of the academic year, when we had our meetings, reunions in the university, there were echoes of what was done in Bright Cityscapes within the research program and the exhibition that you did here, with the connections that were created between designers and researchers. And I know that was also a very hard process, especially for our researchers who were not used to working in this framework. But they were all super enthusiastic and super proud of what they had accomplished, and they were describing this process months after it was finished, which was something that was validating the whole idea and the whole process in itself. And just one final remark, because I was talking about the impact that it had on the university, and I have to extend our congratulations for the continuation of the project, even from our rector, who unfortunately is not able to be here today because he's in Cluj-Napoca at the rector's meeting. But I think there is a full commitment from our university to be a part of this in any form in the future, and we will stay as partners for sure.
Great, thank you, Cristian. The concept of within education, I always say that the time of the education is rather slow. Even if students are fantastic because they respond fast. I mean, the magic that happened this week, it was incredibly fast-paced. And then I also want to speak more about the media that allows that and the strategies that you guys found. But there is an element of generations within a school. Like I think that's the most beautiful and empowering of cross-pollination between different years. That indeed requires time, and it requires repetition in a way. And that's why we are enduring. And I think also with Oana, we always say that pedagogy, we are trying to enter into pedagogy in different forms by linking to the academia, by also inviting students to get out of the academia. And something that we repeated, something in common that happened between these two different formats is indeed explorations, like really embodying these experiences and visiting spaces and using something we said during the weekend, which was really beautiful. How can we suggest to think on future ideas from within the context? So that those ideas, they are not necessarily a copy-paste of what we think is generally exciting, but how can we generate ideas by learning from what we have, and by reconnecting differently, we have different scenarios. And this is a bit the second part of the workshop that you guys did with the students, that I would maybe give it a bit of an insight.
Yeah, so we tried to translate this notion of sort of repurposing a context in our methodology, where we set some pretty strict constraints for the students, where this first half of sort of gathering and scanning and taking photographs of the city, this was all of the sort of raw material that then was used to create these sort of utopias in the 3D modeling program Blender. And so this was important for us to basically think of utopia as something that doesn't emerge from nowhere, but something that's sort of constructed out of the sort of already existing context. And in the site visits that we did throughout the week, for example, we went next door, you know, we see real examples in the city of the sort of loss of this industrial heritage. And so we were interested in this methodology of reappropriating what already exists. So more practically speaking, the students maybe would scan something like a bench or a chair in the city, and if they just using the sort of affordances of the 3D modeling program, they could scale that bench up, and suddenly that's like a big sort of shade structure or something for their project. So we wanted to get them thinking about scaling up and down, scanning, and going out into the city as a method of creating rather than 3D modeling things in the software from scratch. So this method was kind of a method of collage a bit that we ended up on, which then produced this sort of specific visual language that everything is like very textured from the city itself.
I have a question in this direction about, because Bianca, in your practice, it's a lot about communication in a way. Starting from information as materials or text-based or oral. How was the experience of experimenting with narrative forms outside the standards of the disciplines of the students?
Yeah, I think that part was actually the most interesting one for me, at least, and I think also I can speak for you. It was nice to think more on a media level, I think, with them, and in a way that think of, I don't know, photography can be a screenshot, you can do it from your desktop, you just need to frame it. And then to think of like trying to look at formats, I don't know, we checked the Pleșa Cuca format and thought, okay, let's use this as a base and let's play with it, not in a normal way. So yeah, at the end, what comes out is like it's an editing process. Like that's actually where everything happens, I feel like.
And yeah, it was quite interesting to see them interacting with like 3D modeling as a format. Most of them never really had an experience creating like images sort of from scratch. And I think with 3D was quite interesting is like they had no sort of limitation to like their ideas in the modeling of it, which was quite interesting to see how far they went into their pushing their ideas, because they could basically model anything, where we were using like more photography and more like different medias like text and images. They were more like anchored into reality, and as soon as they like sort of engaged with Blender, the software, they really like something clicked also in their mind that they could like create a visual world in a way. It was quite interesting to witness.
I wanted to ask you, Domitille, because you work with informations, also stretching a bit the definition of what information are. And within our program at large, starting from the research of Norbert, but also the collaboration with the architecture school last year and different disciplines, the different laboratories of Polytechnica, for example, information are really central. And with the work of Razvan, and I was really excited to have an information designer as a tutor for the Young Matters program this year. And I wanted to ask you maybe how, or if there was the chance, or if there was not the chance, maybe as now, what information could be in forms of experimentation within pedagogy, also using the context of field research or narrative or editing.
Yeah, so the first sort of like reference that we like prompted to the student was this book by Georges Perec, An Attempt at Exhausting a Place in Paris. And it's a book where he's like sitting in this one square in Paris and just like observing reality and describing everything that is around him and like sort of, yeah, exhausting everything he can witness and see. And it's something that is like quite influential in my work, to just like sit and like see what we can find in like very small details and what they can reveal. But this approach was quite challenging at first with the student, because then they were looking at very diverse thing and not collection. So this is where we decided to refine with like the constraint of Google Street View, because they really then had to investigate and like search and also reinterpret images that they could find, and not the other way around. And I think that was quite interesting to witness. For example, yeah, the project about the compost, she had to like go on Google Street View and find like images of the landfills and like images of trash in the street. And it was like quite interesting to see that for all of their project, they could find something already existing digitally and like archive for them already. And they were like quite, yeah, it was quite fast in the end for all of them to find traces of their project in the city.
Thank you. And maybe I have a question for Connor too, which is this investigative approach, which I think you share entirely, but also we shared also last year in previous program, how this question of investigation reaches can also be applied to on a software, on a program level, because I think your way of working and also the collaboration you had with Bianca and Domitille in this way, using specific technological tools or specific software, but then they also switch. Is there an important element there from a pedagogical point of view, or how would you present that even to students to be like a way to go, like be critical even to a level of the...
Yeah, this is on a higher level something that really informs my own work and approach to pedagogy, is using these tools as creative mediums, but also as sort of objects of critique, and sort of looking at the different sort of power structures or politics like that are embedded within these systems. This wasn't super explicit in this workshop, but we did choose to use Blender, which Blender is an open source software that's free to download, free to use, and has a really, really amazing community of users and people building plugins and sort of modifying the software as they go. And so this was quite important, I think, in the context of this program, of providing these students with tools that are very sort of free to use, very accessible, and have this sort of large user community around them. So this investigation or investigative approach I like to take towards the software systems themselves, but then also just in terms of speaking of the affordances of the tools, working within the software. This is a form of sort of research and investigation in its own right that looks different than maybe doing research on Google or reading theory books or whatnot, but specifically the affordances in 3D software of being able to scale up and down or change materials or sort of really play around with space and time in a quite open way, I think enables a particular form. I don't know if I would call it investigation, but it enables a specific way of sort of relating to their research in a way that wouldn't be possible using sort of legacy media formats like drawing or whatnot.
Thank you. We will also place online the final results of the Young Mothers workshop and the workshop that then you designed for this edition. And maybe I want to conclude with, for Cristian, which letter would you write? No.
Wow.
No.
That's a complicated one.
No, but maybe something about let's say that within this process of working with students, it's also a special moment in which the students can be extremely at the center of experimentation with media, but also with different methods. So as an educator, a letter for your students, or what is your utopia or small dream about what could happen tomorrow, even in a studio? It doesn't have to be big.
Well, okay, so I guess one of the main challenges that we had was to create engagement with them. So this is, I think, something that I would try to address, or to write a letter to someone, I don't know to whom, but it's to somehow poke them and to make them more curious about stuff, some stuff that is not necessarily part of their curriculum, or things that they would normally do to get their grades and things like that. So I think that's why it's super important to have these alternative routes that you are creating through such programs. And even though, you know, sometimes you do have to poke some students to, okay, this is super cool, go and do that, because you will learn a lot. I think it's, as you said, it's small steps, and in time, I think the value of the whole process will be more evident to more students, to more people. And I know this is just the beginning, I think, but it's a good beginning in a way. Yeah.
Thank you. So maybe it's how experimental programs or formats can indeed help for building trust.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Then can be a next and a sequence. And I really thank you. It was a pleasure for me for having you here in Timișoara at FABER. And Cristian, a pleasure again to continue meeting you.
Always a pleasure.
And now we take a break.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our panel today in relation to the opening of the exhibition Woven Secrets. We are now entering a second phase of the conversations, which will bring on stage the designers and some of the partners that we collaborated with. I would like to invite Nicoletta Lavinia Ghimbășan, which worked on a project named Back to Our Ship. I will also invite on stage Gabriela Rada, that worked together with Maria Dombrov on the project What's Next. And I will also call on the stage Cosmin Grapini, the director of Pasmatex. I'm really excited about, I feel emptiness. Please, Joyce. I'm really excited about this conversation that we are gonna have, because the professions of you guys are really different, but with many commonalities, and at different steps of what we understand as textile industries. I would like maybe to give, it's going to be a rather short panel, like 20 minutes, so we don't have the time to really, maybe we should next time do this conversation around the table for dinner. But I would like to start with maybe giving the word to Cosmin Grapini in understanding what it meant within this process for you to collaborate with designers. Maybe also contextualizing what your everyday work is in relation to the factory that you manage, and where design is there.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me, and we're very happy that we could partner with you in this project. We are a very small business, textile, 105 years old, and we are mainly concerned on satisfying our clients, industrial clients. So bringing designers in our home was a breath of fresh air, and also of warmth, because it helped us reconnect somehow with our roots and where everything began many years ago. And for us, it's also an opportunity to make our small industry better maybe understood and also better seen, because as we've seen in the charts, very interesting in the first part of this conference, the textile industry, it is very important for our country. It is a strong part of our let's say economy, and I actually might add some things to what I've saw, because some data are hiding some informations, because the way the Romanian system gathers the information about the different economies is sometimes not totally correct, because a part of the industry is hidden in textile industry is hidden under different codes, working codes, and sometimes you cannot see that. And also many companies are integrated and they are doing a lot of stuff, textile stuff inside the company. I can name a few in Brașov, in Târgu Săcuiesc, in other destinations of Romania, in where the output, the textile output, is not really seen in the numbers that are going out. So yeah, we are somehow one of the last survivors of the old industry in Romania. We even produce in the same place as you have seen, and this somehow keeps us connected to our identity. But designers reinventing or redefining somehow what we are trying to do, and putting the textile chain on the market again, on the chart again, as we have seen in the exhibition, maybe will also help as a red flag for the entire economy, because one of the reasons why the textile industry is going down, the classical textile industry is going down, is because we, as a country, during the last 30-40 years, removed vital links from the industry chain, and right now we have very little production of raw materials in Romania. Here we have somebody who is with experience on my right can vouch to that. You've seen how difficult it is to go from the origin to the end product. So it is very difficult today to survive, actually, because you are not connected to the raw industry. You don't have the links, and then you sometimes, because of the lack of personality, of identity of the textile industry, most of that industry is is performing or is producing from somebody else. So we don't have local identity for our textile industry. That's why a part of the industry, for example, if somebody is doing is working in lawn or doing somebody else's products, it doesn't matter, brands, whatever. Actually, it is in the Romanian economy, it is accounted as services, because you provide a service. It's not accounting as production, because it's only the labor cost. So labor cost, that's service. And then you have somehow you lose some of the insights of the whole industry, because 1,000 employees for Timiș County, I can guarantee you it's much more than that. But you don't see these numbers, and maybe events like this one can help us get a bit in the light, and with the warmth and the identity of designers, we can even make ourselves better seen and understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Cosmin. we went to visit Pasmatex, which is the time when we arrived, you say we are weavers. So maybe just for the public. And when I met Gabriela for the first time, I remember that we were visiting UTT, and we met for the first time there, and then we were also really extremely happy that you applied to be one of the designers of the program. And I was really mesmerized by the energy and the knowledge of someone that studies fashion design, and then it follows a path within the local industry. And Gabriela, you have been working within the UTT, but now you're also continuing your career in another company, which is Amia Amalia. And for me, was I could learn so much, and I really appreciate a lot this expertise that comes from the working within the field. And you developed a beautiful work that is really important for the exhibition, because it's a series of interviews to the UTT workers in different positions within the factory. So you use your knowledge and your trust that you built in the years you worked there to spot a light on their voices. So even a bit beyond the individuals, no? And I wanted to ask you to give an insight, to share with us as a designer that someone that studied design and then work in industry. How would you? What can you tell us about this choice, but also this path, and your profession, indeed?
Thank you for having me first. About the switch in my career, it's as you say, I studied fashion design, and because I'm a genuinely curious person, I wanted to see what is the industry actually, what is happening in real life, how is it going, how fashion is produced, what is the supply chain of fashion, because we don't really learn that in university. Yes, we do creativity and very nice projects, but I wanted to see the business part, most of it, and how is the real production happening. So I decided to join UTT as a business developer, and during 6.5 years, I visited a lot of knitting factories, and not only knitting, also weavers and other textile factories. So I had a really wide view of the industry, because I was responsible for many countries in Europe, not only Romania. So I saw the European picture, which was helping me a lot to have the big picture, actually. So we decided in this project to go back to basics a little bit, as you say, follow the yarn. This stayed in my mind all the time. Okay, we have to follow the yarn. Who's touching the yarn? Who is producing it? Who is moving the boxes and the cones? It's the people in the factory who do that. They have such a long expertise. We have people working in this field for 30 years in the same job, and they are not bored at all to do this thing. And we were curious, like, okay, how can you do this for so long? Do you still enjoy it? How do you see it now that we are in 2024 and you are still working in the same thing for so long, and here in Timișoara, which is not the biggest textile place in Romania? And if it's something that I can say generally about UTT, is that they love a good challenge. And this is what keeps them alive. And everyone in the interview says what is motivating for them is having to adapt, to create a new product, to come and fight with a new challenge and discover something new. So when they said that to me, we thought, okay, we have to show this to the people of Timișoara, because among them, there are people who are involved in some things that are touching their skin every day, which are the clothes or many other things which are produced by yarn. And not everyone sees that the yarn is the object that is a big part in creating that final product.
Thank you. I was really mesmerized by the energy of Gabriela and, of course, the energy of Maria, that was your partner in crime in this adventure. And I take the chance to link to Lavinia, which the the goal was, if for you the goal is like follow the thread, for Lavinia was how do we make this thread? Lavinia project started from an investigation and an amazing passion. She also established a design studio, laboratory, atelier, Nalba in Brașov, where you're from. You also work as an interior designer. But this passion and this curiosity, I borrow the word, about this material of the wool and the critical and saddening conditions of the wool today in Romania pushed you to look for alternatives of alternative methods of engagement with this like large map of agents around the wool, not necessarily production, but the wool ecosystem. I would like ask you to share with us this challenge of how to make a thread starting from Romanian wool, and why is indeed a challenge.
Thank you for being here, and that's going to be a long story then.
We have 20 minutes.
I keep it short. First of all, the preoccupation with wool came from the reality of the situation, that wool has become a waste, and as much as we thought that initially it's a case for Romania, within our studio in Alba, I'm a co-founder with Capucin Robert, who is based in France, so we learned that it's a problem around Europe at different levels. And this is how we started our collaboration too. And so we thought, instead of going into nostalgia or sadness, can we think of different models to relink, as we were talking about, these missing links in the chains of wool production. So we took Turkana wool, because when I say Turkana, I guess everyone knows what I mean. And Martina also learned that very well. And we took it because we were offered through the network of craft people and wool people 3 tons of wool. And that's the state of the situation, that people would be very happy to offer you this wool because it will save them the time to discard it or burn it. And so we took this wool and we had to connect methods that are archaic and traditional, and then we were lucky through this collaboration to get to an industrial context, which for us in Alba didn't happen before. And so the wool was sorted in hand, which again put in light the practice of sorting as a hidden practice, in a sense, something that didn't have a title per se in the past, and it's still being done by certain people, and very useful to sort the good wool from the bad wool. And then we took it further to washing this wool, as the biggest problem in Romania is that we don't have a center for washing wool, and the wool is generally going to Bulgaria or Turkey to be washed, and then we purchase it back in a sense. Then we went to the Vâltor, which is an archaic washing solution. And after that, we colored the wool within Alba with plants and roots that gave us yellow and some tone of red. And it all goes into this idea whether we could use what we have locally. And it's not as innovative because it's been done before. So this knowledge exists. Mm-hmm. And then further, we went to smaller manufacturers who were able to card this wool and thread it in a non-spinned way, without going into technicalities. And I will jump to the industry. And we had this amazing openness from UTT to test whether we can, for the first time, have Romanian wool processed there. With the goal then to go to Pasmatex and weave it. And so this thread had to have a certain density and had to have a certain uniformity, which happened after 3 tests. And we are happy for it. And after the compromise of combining it with acrylic, still we managed 40% Turkana wool and 60% acrylic. It's, as I learned from the collaborators, it's a success in the sense that until now they only used up to 33% of organic fiber. So I'm very glad that this worked out, and we actually managed to weave a few trimmings, a few bands that have this local wool and the local story in it.
As we were speaking along, the process was a process of try and error, and the project of Lavinia was since the beginning a bit of a question, because the mapping of the agents is there. Is probably the project that is more complex in how you navigated the system. It was able to connect different agents at different moments of the process of searching for this thread. So even the concept of embedding errors, and which it's important for a design process. I'm extremely happy that a project like this is part of the show, in the sense that opens up the question of how can design reconnect or link, but also connect the identity of a designer with the identity of a factory, for example. And in that sense, it comes to mind maybe an important element that we need to address, and maybe Gabriela, you can give us a background, because you have been through the voices of in parallel, while interviewing the workers, you also developed a bit of a collection of threads that have different nature, different techniques behind. And we have been talking about since the beginning how the concept of competitiveness of threads, production, manufacturing here, it's under question. Yeah. And so would you tell us what's the state, or what is really important for you to say about this, the relationship between local threads, global resources? What are the movements there?
Yes, since the last 2 years, I observed that it's not in the numbers that we had at the beginning, which is normal because the data should be processed and the numbers should be given after. But from my experience in this, the textile industry in the last 2 years has decreased a lot. And it decreased here in Europe, especially because of the ultra-fast fashion, because of the cheap prices that are coming for Asia and from Turkey. And if we buy some material, let's say at the price that they sell the final product, then the competitiveness, even here in Romania, it's really, really difficult to keep it going. And here in Timișoara, the main material that we use in production was acrylic. And it's not, first, it's not popular anymore because everyone starts to be more conscious about sustainability and that it's synthetic and it's not the greatest material. So we are trying to go towards more sustainable sources. So this was a really nice exercise for us also to work with the Romanian wool, because it was never used before in our factory. We can work with wool, but extra fine merino wool, the different materials that are already at the stage to be easily processed by us. So it's nice to try to make these links. We tried to make it before for recycling. We are in collaboration with some recycling mills that are processing second-hand products, for example, clothes, and they transform them back into fibers. But as Cosmin said, we miss some links. There are some steps that are not to be found here in Romania in an industrial situation. So we tried and failed, we tried and failed, and as you say, Lavinia, we have some, it's good that we have this result, even if it's not a 100% Romanian wool. I think it's a success, the fact that we did this. When I saw the product and the wool that you brought at UTT, and knowing Pasmatex standard of yarns that you need in production, because I knew how it's going, I was, okay, this is going to be a big challenge. I was sure, but luckily we have open people. They're very creative and trying to find ways to work with the product. And sometimes compromises are needed in order to go forward. And maybe now we make a bigger compromise, 60% acrylic. Maybe next year we manage to make less and less. So finally we will come to a final product that is 100% made in Romania. And I think that for the future, this is something worth considering. And even the employees at the UTT, they said that we should do something more local, we should work with some other materials and challenge ourselves to be here, and maybe the people will be more enthusiastic to buy our products, because this is an important point. Everyone is buying online, ultra-fast fashion is very popular also here in Romania, but they don't realize that we can buy something made here, and the supply chain can be a lot shorter than it is right now. So this could be a good occasion for everyone to understand that local supply chain is possible.
And this makes me think about an important keyword, which is flexibility. So Cosmin, how is possible to have a flexible business, still responding to the standards of the clients, as you said at the beginning?
Well, the aim is to be flexible about the solutions, not about the quality. So we are continuously working in finding new solutions and adapt ourselves to the realities, because if you take, you know, I was staying in the back of the room earlier and thinking about textiles. Just imagine removing textiles from our lives, how this room would look. Pretty naked, right? So we need textiles, but like Gabriela said, when we go out there and shop, we don't realize how we influence the industry and how we influence somebody that's actually our neighbor maybe, or the company across the street. Because we are talking about the environment, we are talking about being sustainable. But if we do, for example, a map for a single piece of clothing that we have on us, to see where exactly have the threads come from, or where is it going after it's being recycled. It's been done, that test. And I will not name the company, but a very famous big company with a lot of shops in Romania also. If you bring back the product to recycle, the product will travel 20,000 kilometers in the end up. And this is crazy, if you think about it. So yeah, we need to be flexible to accept that we have to start from different points. We need to be creative about this, because if we want to be stubborn and do things like we always did, we will not survive. The industry will not survive. And I don't see a small step from 33% to 40%. Actually, it's an increase of almost 20%. I say it like this. So in wool, and in local wool. And yeah, it is all about fashion. It is all about people's pockets. And we are trained by the society to be as comfortable as possible, and even when making our choices. But we are not always aware of how these choices impact us directly or through others. And local sourcing, it is a solution for the future to reduce also the ecological footprint of everything that we do, but also to reduce cost in the end and to improve the quality of life. So we're not just talking about textiles, we're talking about our way of life. And textiles is one way to go about it, and one way where we can start. Imagine with the food industry doing the same thing, trying to go local. Let's do this about textile, local. Romania has a history in this, because Romania was a closed country for 45 years. And closed country meant we had to have all the solution within our borders. That's why we have such a diverse industry, because that was the politics at that time, to do everything inside our country, everything, even rice. We wanted to do rice, not like in Milan, but like in Asia. We try to do rice in southeast Romania. So we try to have every industry, every raw material industry, even in textiles. But right now, if I want to weave a ribbon, I have to take yarns from Italy, from Portugal, from Poland, or from Far East, which is absolutely difficult and almost impossible to be competitive, like Gabriela said before. It's almost impossible because just the travel cost of the materials, just think about that.
Yes.
Our power of negotiation with somebody that doesn't know us, we're just a number on an Excel sheet. You know, somebody, a name, a number, a client. There's no connection, there's no vibe, there's no energy, there's no warmth.
This is something which we have been speaking with Lavinia about, how design as a discipline of that use different tools and also as a certain flexibility, and mostly like the capacity of potentially creating scenarios, narratives. So to close through the contribution of Lavinia. How design can, because design also is a really competitive environment itself, but through this process of learning by doing and experimenting, what is your idea around how to, is it a possibility to continue to engage, and which kind of aspect of the design helped you, for example, to engage, or which aspect of design you think you should nurture more for example, for a future next step? We were talking about trend. How do we create trends? Or how do we tell stories? Or how we make the story travel, not necessarily the materials, right? I don't know. I want to close with a future dream, which can also be really rooted in reality.
I think since we started with NALPA, so 2 years prior to this event, we were thinking a lot what it means to map like this. So we didn't know much about wool at the time we started, so we just asked someone who recommended us to someone else. And then we invited people at home to color wool together. And so many times I say that all you need is omenie, which is like humanity. Apart from all the design methodologies I've learned, going on a field, it was a very humane way to, and of course it required a lot of openness from everyone, all the actors that we've met, but as a method, it was a lot about curiosity, maybe working a bit as an anthropologist, trying to open these doors, trying to photograph, trying to take notes. The video in this case also, I have learned how important it is that we have documented in this way. And for the future, we are thinking to continue actually and document more of these actors that are existing in Romania around wool that we perhaps don't know about. So the documentation part was very important, and then we can have a library to count on in a sense, and all these contacts that create the ecosystem. And from a design point of view, of course, I'm all the time thinking, one thing is exploring the wool for all these amazing properties that it has. And one thing is, how do we transform it into an object that is good for the environment, as we discussed, that also respects Romania's cultural heritage, and that is relevant today. Because at the beginning, I thought, what does it mean to be a designer, also one from France and one from Romania, and start working with wool in a craft way? So I think it's a lot for the future to try to bridge what we already know and we have as a heritage, as a craft, as a legacy, to a contemporary approach, to the fact that we have this kind of context to discuss about it. We have new technologies to explore the material. We have knowledge from everywhere, really, to try to solution the problem. I guess these are some of my thoughts.
Thank you. So I think we can leave with an important question that you probably all share, which is shorter supply chains can exist, how to reconsider the link, the connections, and how to merge skills.
I'll just like 10 seconds. Imagine the designers are the key people here. You are the chefs, they are choosing the ingredients. If the designers start choosing local ingredients, you will have local products. Because even if later there's an economist coming and saying numbers and looking at the numbers and prices and everything, it's still, we shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you land among stars, you know? So just try for it, go for it, and maybe step by step we'll be able to reignite this local sourcing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I think this is a beautiful ending. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Martina.
Thank you. And to continue our conversation, I will invite on stage Dinu Bodiciu, which work on the project Balkan Baroque. Alesia Cîdă, which work on the project Caution, Rotating Blades. And Mihaela and Hada, that work on the project Unsolved Patterns. And Emma Silaghi from EcoCinix. Hello. This is another really exciting panel, in the sense that it's always it's beautiful to have on the same conversation people with different backgrounds. So in this case, the panel is actually really rich of designers that are still really involved within the academia. But then we also have Emma that we didn't met yet. So it was really a pleasure for me to meet you, and I would probably ask you to unlock the conversation immediately. What is EcoCinix and what are you doing there? I know it's a super young business.
Yes, indeed. We are a very young but very ambitious business. We actually are the second textile recycling company in Romania. And we are currently developing a system to recycle as many clothing in a more qualitative way, I would say. And my role there is actually a textile engineer. But I'm also heavily involved in the educational side of sustainable fashion. So I am very, very happy to have the opportunity to combine these two passions into an actual result, a physical result of this company. And currently, we are really looking into expanding and creating more and more types of products and opportunities and links between industries, because, you know, textile industry is not only clothing, but it is surrounding us everywhere. And there's so many things that we can do, and we just have to open our minds to it.
And I have a question, because I know that along the process of connection between your facility and Alesia, for example, you also went through the importance of textile recycling, but also of large gaps and limits. So could you please guide us a little on what are, for example, the biggest challenges that you face within the recycling?
Well, absolutely. First of all, I would say that the major challenge is the fact that, so the need for our company is extremely big, as Romania actually has most of their textile waste originating from households. So we have a lot of clothing that we throw away, and there's very little opportunities to actually recycle it. Now, we created the opportunity. We are constantly receiving stocks and a lot of supply, but we are facing a challenge in selling it, because there's a lot of hesitation when it comes to recycled. They're saying, oh, it's waste. It's not new, it's not virgin, it's not as good. So we are actually having this, we have to break this wall between our product and the manufacturers, and we have to convince them that we actually have a great quality product and it is worth using, and we can also customize to the needs of the customer. And we are very adaptive, you know. I think that this is the only way that we can survive on the textile industry business nowadays, if you adapt and if you listen to your customers. And yeah, I would say that this is the major challenge. And then secondly, we face the fact that since it is indeed recycled textiles, we are not able to offer the same quality as premium virgin fiber. So then you need to invest a little bit more thought into how to use this recycled input. But I think that the effort is definitely worth it, and there's a huge need to use these textiles because we produce a lot of waste, unfortunately. But yeah, this is the two main challenges that we face nowadays.
Thank you. And Alesia, you collaborated with EcoCinix, also with IMP, but also you took over the material that we collected from Uno Uni. And maybe it's interesting, you are the youngest of the participants, just graduated from London, and we are super happy that you could develop your almost first work back in Romania.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah. So I would like to ask you, like, from a super young perspective, as someone that is out of school, full of energy, how did you approach, or you would like to continue approaching and working with the limits of recycling, which is you also encountered while choosing which part of material that you received you wanted to apply for what, right? So maybe if you can give us a background.
I think the limitations are like the most fun aspect of it, because I'm a creative, I have to find ways to use this waste in a way that's catering to my needs. And my practice, I never put my concept at the core of my of the work that I do. I put the research that's out there. So that's why for me waste is absolutely fascinating. And you know, I feel like we all creatives think that we have the best idea and we kind of have this selfishness that, oh, we have to create this and put this idea out there. But I feel like it would be best to work with what's out there instead of using virgin resources for this selfish need to create. That's how I see things.
So the ability of the creative to be in contact with a specific context and also source this, I mean, find the context, the resources for it, in order to then repurpose them in maybe changing the value or adding values, or you at the end you created also a bit of an experience in the space for a generation that is younger, even for kids. Okay, thank you. In this idea of the designer or practitioner positioning their practice with criticality, but also awareness of both heritage, the potential of short supply chain and the longer supply chain, which somehow occupy our everyday life, is Dinu. You work both as an educator and also as a practitioner with your own brand. Can I call it brand?
Yes. Maybe label.
Label. I learned so much by talking to you during the conversation we had in the process, and I really would like you to share within your work that exactly connect different worlds of the textile industry, also in relation to clothing. What are the core values that for you are important? Because you also work with second-hand material, sourcing from France, from markets. I would like you to share a bit your method, your practice.
Thank you, Martina, and thank you for inviting me in this panel and also being part of the exhibition. I think it's great that this exhibition happens in Timișoara, and because very little has happened in relation to textile industry, to fashion design, to It is an aspect that is important for the city, considering that you just mentioned in the previous panel, we had such a big industry, and unfortunately many factories have closed. So in my practice, after graduating and working for some companies and starting teaching, I realized that as a designer, although I would like to work with raw materials to express my crazy ideas, it's not a time for that anymore. This is a time of fashion, and now we live in a post-fashion time when we do not have, designers cannot express themselves as drama identities as we were used with Christian Dior, Coco Chanel, and this is vintage, this is past. We now live on a planet that we need to acknowledge that we have done so much damage to the ecosystem, and fashion is one of the industries that has damaged that the most, because clothes are contributing to our identity and is the most maybe deceiving way of building ourselves with clothes every day. And I think so sorry, fashion brands are also guilty because they became mechanisms of producing capital. So in the end, fashion business are just money-making companies. And I saw myself as an individual belonging to this ecosystem, and I do not identify with those beliefs and ways of thinking and ways of acting. And when I decided to start again being creative, I thought that I have to do this in a more considerate way, in a more ethical way. And I put myself, knowing that sustainability is quite a wide framework of practices, I selected some traits of sustainability that I could guarantee that I can work with. So one of them is upcycling. And here I want to stress that there is a difference between the term upcycling and recycling. Recycling is the, I'm really sorry, I have allergy, and it's, so recycling is when components, garments are torn down to fibers and then respun, rewoven or knitted, and new fabrics are made again. Upcycling is a deconstruction of existing garments up to material, but not to the fiber. So the material remains there, and reworking the material in a way. So this is challenging because materials through wearing, they get worn marks, they get stains, they get holes, and how we can work with this. In a way, archives of an existing life that we have learned so carefully since, oh, thank you, since we made eyes as kids that, oh, to stain your garment is not proper, it's not accepted in society. So in a way, it's a fight with many, many stereotypes and many teachings that we get as kids. And I'll try to shorten my answer. These three elements that I work with from the bigger frame of sustainability would be upcycling, zero waste, and slowness. And zero waste, I approach it in a different way, because zero waste as a design paradigm entails that the designer starts with a piece of raw fabric, and through production there's no waste left, or minimal waste, like maybe 1%. So by doing zero waste in an upcycling approach means that if I design a type of garment, the waste is used for another type of garment. And any other smaller waste that remain, they become something else, fillings for window pillows, etc. So literally from the studio that I run, there is no textile waste that comes out. It's only paper and plastic from things that I buy. And then another question is for the industry and for the government, which will implement laws, I think from next year, that every company will have to have a contract with a waste provider. So what do I do if I don't have waste? I still have to pay for that contract, although I will not serve any waste for the contractor.
Thank you, Dinu. I think it's really beautiful when, from a design practice, we can talk about policy and how the two things are indeed interlinked substantially, and also how the designers can rethink. I mean, I personally think that the final ideal end of a design process is indeed policy, but that's for another episode at FABER, maybe in 3 years. To link what you were saying about the zero waste as a mission, as an ambition, or just as a parameter, right? Like especially design and standards, which is a concept that is on which design is based. How can we redefine the standard, right? And by redefining the standards, also different roles and different products come out. So what if we start designing with the concept of zero waste, punto, like as a sort of like given parameter. And that was a bit also the process that Ada, can I say Ada or, okay, Andreea, Pleșa, Andreea Pleșa and Mihaela worked in connection with a company, Content Text, but also within your both PhD, you finish your PhD, you are in the process of the PhD, you're both teachers at the West University in the design department, actually Dinu also. How did you, because in the way how you approach the zero waste concept, it was not necessarily starting from the end, but starting within the process of designing, especially with one element, which is the pattern making. Maybe it's good to share with us what was the motivation, why did you start there, and how did you approach it, both in terms of the factory flow, but also with your own skills.
Okay, so after I finished my bachelor degree, I start my master degree, and in that time I have to start working. And I was working at Content-X, and it was really interesting for me how they can recycle all the fabrics they have that are 100% polyester, but everything else that is polyester and elastan or whatever, it's actually trash. And they have a problem with all of those things. And we were trying to see how we can try to find a method, to find something new that we can make from there. Because we wanted to give a solution for the factory. We wanted to make, I don't know, to give a pattern that is valued in the industry and helps the industry, not just play. And the project is called Unsolved Patterns because we reach a point in our research that give us the line that says that the emotional part will never cross the financially part. So people, I don't know if anyone in here or in Timișoara or wherever thinks that fast fashion is okay. I think everyone is conscious about this, and I think everyone knows that fast fashion is harmful and buying is harmful for the environment, for the workers, and so on. But with all of those information, looking good and be chic and buying and buying and buying, it's also interesting for them. So we wanted to we tried to make a pattern that gives us more opportunities and reduce the scraps in the factory. We managed to have 3 kinds of pattern, but all of them are really, really expensive, and they will not be a problem solver, at least right now, at least in Timișoara.
For the first experiment that you reduced the 50%, how many sewing did you make?
A lot. Something like, I can't remember the numbers of sewing, but there are 200 and something.
And you were also speaking about how within the factory sewing has a cost.
Yes.
So I'm still curious to know how much would that cost.
We didn't get this information yet. They didn't answer to this question. We are still curious, but if they send us the email with the response, I'm gonna text you, I promise.
Thank you.
Indeed, in factories, sewing is counted in fashion, is counted by stitch. So according to, and this is crazy, stitches can vary in length according to the thickness of the material and different areas. So if it's a smaller stitch, you will have more per inch, then it will be more expensive, because that means time in the end. So time is really important for production.
And there was something we spoke about, how like how it is really difficult to create solutions if you keep the values of a factory, and time is an important value in the moment that especially is a currency, like it has a value in terms of money. But what maybe I can ask Miha, because you had also all along the different all the process. It's almost if there is a climax from a really practical take on the pattern, and then the pattern becomes almost like an abstraction. So the pattern as a method, it acquires different value itself within your making process. It would be really beautiful if you could bring us in the steps.
Okay, so as Ada said, we had these 3 t-shirts that were really technical, and they had their own method of doing. Like the first one was made by using collage or patchwork. The second, we used the waste from the factory as a pattern, and the third used the accidental cut technique. So they are really technical solution and really practical ones. In the fourth part of the project, we used the pattern as a metaphor, or to speak about the environment and the space of the factory as a space embedded with identity and value. And the last part of the project was speaking about the movements of the worker as a very important thing, because every t-shirt or every garment we wear, it takes a lot of time, a lot of work, and a lot of movements of the worker. And we also collaborated with Catalin for this part. We integrated AI recognition. And we presented the pattern as almost as a painting. So this is how we used the pattern in our project.
Thank you. Cătălin Botan is a researcher from Technical University of Timișoara, Politehnica, and couldn't join us today. Sorry, but the didactic started and it's October. So,
yeah.
But his contribution was an interesting take on how technologies of observation, in this case, machine vision, like camera vision and tracking technologies, can indeed, in the case of this collaboration, used as tools for observing, tracking the movement, the movement of the hands of the worker, and transform that into pattern. So we had this escalation of from how can your experiment are really close to the method of the factory, and then they can also be abstracted and distant, like create a distance in order to create differently.
Yes, almost like reverse engineering for the last part with AI, from the final product to another product, like from the final to the pattern.
Yes. I think what is really beautiful in all this contribution, and probably, I mean, we could have more time to discuss about how many ways of interaction we have starting if we work with waste, because we conceive waste as the last step of our supply chain, but what if we look as a beginning? or how do we design with waste in mind? And with that question, I would close the panel and thank you all for your beautiful work and mostly all the different knowledge that we have been exchanging. And I'm extremely proud that this was an opportunity for design practice also to be tested.
Yes.
Because the PhD, as is really also, you are in a PhD, it is a personal journey. So I wish it was also somehow a mix between an academic approach, but also for an exhibition, independency. So I'm really glad of all these different moments of relation with textile. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And yeah, sorry. I can welcome the next standing. And now, as a last conversation, Razvan Zamfira from Studio Interrobank and Norbert Petrovici join us. This is an honor for me to have this conversation in public. Again, like during, we should probably once start recording, but I'm not so into recording Zoom calls. I like the privacy of the brainstorming. But I think today it's a really good moment to talk retrospectively of what was the process, because with Razvan as an information designer, a graphic designer, we have been speaking a lot about how do we deliver these informations. So maybe I would like to ask you, starting from what is visible in the space, to also tell us what were the choices from a design perspective. How did you create a space for this data to be narrative and to be digested and communicated?
Yeah, so there were quite a lot of layers to the project, and quite a lot of starting points that at the end connected into what you can see in the design. So one of it was when in one of our first conversations when Norbert and Martina was this really interesting network of all of the products of the local economy, and then we realized that's one point of starting the conversation and connecting with the data, the actual physicality of all of these outputs of the economy. And this is how we started looking at the products and what each product means and how to represent it through data. And there we came with this metaphor for so we have these labels on all of our garments that tell the story of what's the material, how should we take care of it, where it was produced, and we thought of making this for each of those products. But at the same time, this tells a data story for the individual products, but we needed a way to also show the broader picture of how this aggregated is shown at the level of the entire economy. So we also tried to build this kind of more classical view on data as a timeline. And we also wanted to show it geographically. So we played a bit with some abstractions of maps. But in the end, the idea with the data visualization part was to use these two ways you can use data visualization in a project. To explore, you can explore each product, you can explore and learn through it, and also explain what's happening there at the level of the product, at the level of the economy. Yeah, so this is a part of the whole thing, but I guess we can get through in more detail.
Yeah, and along the process, there was always a bit of a back and forth, right? This is maybe a question for Norbert, because to have a collaborator like designers like us, what's the meaning of data? Like I don't want to make a philosophical question, but I'm really interested to understand if your method of work or your readings change or adapt. What is the challenge there? And in connecting with designers, with the goal is indeed information sharing, right? Like creating a space for this information to be more accessible. Is there something in the process that make it specific or no challenges?
Sure. So there is a part of the process that is co-created. So you always wanna ask questions and have no clue how to answer them, and then I have to research it and once again come back with the research. And it's an iterative process. And also now Răzvan also pushed me to clarification. That is, I need that type of information that can be visualized in some particular way, especially so as a scientist, you're obliged and you're trying to take the data and create a narrative in a theoretical framework. However, here is generally much more linked with how you put it, not as a policy process, but as a design process, art process. It's very different. It's a different type of thinking, and this is the second time I'm pushed to do that, which is not the policy type, it's not the academic type. We are trying to create the basis to inform an idea of an exposition, which is very different. In my experience, this is a new type of thinking. And it's not nothing like I'm going to the theories and the data and I will try to talk with them. Actually, it's always a conversation with you as a curator and one that pushes us to create this new context.
I think this is maybe a question that is not interesting in the sense of I've been noticing how we talk about economy, right? The economist or the data scientist. So there is a distance that between those disciplines exists. That's why I posed this question of how we are actually within our process trying to reduce that distance a little. Just to give you a context, otherwise it seems like a bit of a random question. But I think it's really important as part of the program to be able to still all of us do our professions, but also create languages. Because sometimes the design, what also is busy in doing is creating languages. Sometimes between disciplines, the language is not the same. I mean, when I approach your data sets, I have a moment of uncomfortableness for a totally different language. But then when this becomes narrative, or when Răzvan reads the data sets and codes, automates processing for visualization, suddenly it becomes a third language in which we can all connect to. That was a bit like the context of the question. In terms of formats of visualization, because that's always an important question we have, also taking back on the level of language. If you know, this is more for Norbert, if you look at textile industry, what do you think the formats of visualization were the more relevant for this story?
It's not the textile industry, but the question you asked, and also Răzvan. It's very different. The question you asked, both you and Oana, were sometimes or now historical. And the historical paradigm changed a lot. I started from the 90s, but then you pushed me to go to socialism. I did not want to do that because I knew it will take at least a month of work. And it did took a lot of work because there are different type of data, how to put them. So it's not that the data talks with me, but actually the way I interrogate the data based on the theories, given your interest. And then also Răzvan came with a completely different story. It was new for me because methodologically he thinks, from my perspective, in two different layers. On the one hand, he tried to show actually the data set. Literally, the data set hangs in the exposition area, but also to aggregate them in a story that it's both at the data set level, that you can see a story within it. If you don't know the context, if I would approach it, I have no idea if I could understand that. It's a process of discovery, but also it's aggregated at different level, that it's a map and timeline. So it's much more his decision there.
I mean, I think that so when we're talking about design now, unfortunately, we talk about many times of the last part of the process, where we put the nice ribbon on top of it, and then we try to, I don't know, communicate with the people. But I think also it's good to see design as more of a way of mediating between different professions, a way of maybe deconstructing something and trying to recompile it in a new way. So I think this is what it was interesting to use, what I also always like to do with data visualization, because you start to see different narratives evolving, and by deconstructing something, then you start to understand how we got to those data points as well. So yeah, I think it's important to use design early in any process, also in research, as a tool, as a way to communicate between more of us, as a tool to find new questions to answer to.
I totally agree. And it's something that is this year within the research, it's also visible how I remember one of the first meetings we spoke about the space of product, the space of companies. Already for me was an evolution of our languages from the previous year, because I could start imagining what a space of product could be. And then it became. We created together also with Alexandra Spiridon from FO that helped us in the exhibition design of the labels. We created this space. My question is for an information designer and the relation to space and relation to information, which is a form of publishing. It's a different form of publishing.
Yeah, very different.
What's the what would be your ideal way of interacting with this space of publishing?
You mean how to interact with the
As a form of it is a really long and different process for publishing data and information. And it is more complex than writing an article. So it's its own method. Therefore, I'm really curious of how can we push a bit the boundaries of this to interact with this space of publishing information and narratives.
I mean, we are used to see, maybe nowadays at least, data as something that is, so we collect, I don't know, more and more data. It's something, if you look online, is this counter of how many terabytes of data we collect every second. So it seems like we have to show data in also a very dynamic way on screen, to interact, to get an insight from it quite quickly. There's all this discussion in DataViz now that if you don't understand it in 20 seconds, then you haven't communicated right. So that's one theory and one way of seeing it. But I think if you spend a bit more time with the data, then you get some different type of knowledge, and it's more embedded. So I think this kind of way of showing it, not on a dashboard and on a report on screen, but actually using it in space, interacting with it, is a lot more valuable, because you actually spend more time and you start to think about more questions regarding it, and you internalize the message better this way. At some point we worked on a project with ceramics, and we were thinking, we made a set of plates, and we were thinking, if you would eat from these plates every day, would you think about the data coded in them in a different way? And I think you do. So I think an exhibition space or physical space and data would really enhance message and increase in understanding.
For me, it's really about the reduction of distance. So how quantitative data is indeed really inaccessible most of the time. And reducing this distances also allows access to information, but therefore also access to possibilities, even of imagination. And then maybe I want to conclude with a question to Norbert that goes into the